Marvel's current Amazing Spider-Man run over from Zeb Wells has featured so many great moments, but a key storyline for me in particular has to be the Dark Web saga, where the characters of Ben Reilly and Madeline Pryor staged an assault over on New York City with the alternate dimension of Limbo. I've been waiting for Marvel to return to some of these plot threads over in the core Spider Man series, and it looks like the publisher is set to do just that for the Amazing Spider Man's 36th chapter, set to reintroduce heroes like Wreck Rap as well as the Insidious Six, and we're also going to get caught up over with the Limbo Embassy and Madeline Pryor. My name is Ariko Braddock, and today, let's go ahead and explore the new chapter of Marvel's core Amazing Spider-Man series. But before we get deeper into the video, I want to encourage you to consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the like button over on this video. Spider-Man has never gone this dark. Now the consequences are unraveled. Will New York ever look at him the same way again? Amazing Spider-Man 36 is written over from Zeb Wells, featuring art from Ed McGuinness. We have inks from Mark Farmer, colors from Marcio Menyz, letters over from VC's Joe Caramagna, and we have a cover for the issue coming in over from Ed McGuinness and Marcio Menyz. Really love this dark and bold cover over for this chapter of Amazing Spider-Man that's set to reintroduce some of the plot threads of Limbo back into the series. Plus, I think there's something really illustrative and bold over with Ed McGuinness's line. Love that he got to approach the cover and this really fascinating Spider-Man issue, diving deep into some of those fascinating Limbo plot threads. I want to extend a big thank you over to Adventures in Poor Taste and preview some of Ed McGuinness's gorgeous artwork over in Spider-Man 36 here. Really thought this opening page over with Wreck Rap doing some investigations was so intriguing here. The use of negative space did such a great job building to the final reveal here with Wreck Rap. I also love how in this page, or in this panel towards the bottom of the screen here, we can see Wreck Rap over with the hat, clearly trying to disguise his identity, and I really think the shading helps build a little bit more tension over with the scene. This expression of the character that Wreck Rap is antagonizing over in Queens builds this really interesting comedic energy that I think is kind of radiating through this chapter of Spider-Man here. Really appreciate this next page where we get the full reveal over from Ed McGuinness with Wreck Rap teasing this poor man here. The way that Ed McGuinness draws some of the body language for Wreck Rap I think is just so beautiful here. He does have a very large body, and I think McGuinness is able to render it with so much precision to give him a level of just kind of disheveled body language that makes him just so interesting to look at over in the first place here. Once again, the fascinating page design, these really interesting bleeds, and these smaller panels make the page so easy for readers to get immersed in here. Over on this next page, I think Ed McGuinness gets deep into some crazy visual designs over on the page as we get to see Wreck Rap and the Grave Goblin go mano a mano here over on the comic book. I think utilizing some of the more comedic elements of these Limbo characters in modern day New York is so irreverent and brings out this really natural comedic sensibility to the core Amazing Spider-Man title. I've been waiting for Zeb Wells to return to this plot thread for quite some time, but I think the build-up and final execution from not only Wells but McGuinness here too is incredibly bold over on the page. I was a massive fan of this scene shift here over with Luke Cage and Madeline Pryor in the Limbo Embassy. I thought it was really interesting to learn about some of the internal politics of the issue. Also, seeing Luke Cage show up again in a Spider-Man comic was incredibly cathartic here. I feel like he's got some really interesting tension over on the page with Madeline Pryor. The way that Madeline puts him in a very small chair, only to make Luke uncomfortable, I think does a great job building some of the tension in a really interesting and almost comedic situation that Zeb Wells is just so fantastic at writing over across these Spider-Man issues. There is a lot of dialogue in this issue, but I think it's actually a lot of fun to go ahead and read here. Really like the debut over with Spider-Man on the next page. I thought his debut captured in a really interesting visual sequence from McGuinness again. I think the level of shading over on Spider-Man's costume is incredibly interesting over from color artist Marcio Menyz here. Also, the perspective that Ed McGuinness captures for the page helps keep that visual intrigue alive here. Once again, the internal politics with the Limbo embassy and the rest of New York City, I think, is really, really fascinating. I also loved how this served as a kind of wake up call over for Madeline Pryor to rein in some of the Insidious Six as well as the character of Wreck Rap as well over in this comic book issue. I think Amazing Spider Man has done a fantastic job leading up to the gang war, in the way that this issue just devotes one page towards Hammerhead and a mysterious character is filled with so many intriguing elements of humor, but also subtlety that are hopefully going to lead towards a really massive event sized arc over for the Amazing Spider Man. Over towards the end of Amazing Spider Man, I really enjoyed the prolonged fight sequence over between Wreck Rap, Spider Man, and Repo. The way that Repo was able to contort his body with the abilities of Limbo is just absolutely horrifying and adds this really fascinating visual element here that Ed McGuinness captures so well with the incredibly animated set of visual designs here. I love the natural humor elements that Limbo brings out of the Amazing Spider Man franchise and think that Wreck Rap is a perfect way to capture some of that intrigue here. Also, some of the other Insidious Six cameos in the issue are so silly and pull on all the fascinating elements of Limbo, really propelling this issue of Amazing Spider Man to have such an interesting tone here. I'm always really shocked with how well the Amazing Spider Man franchise is able to meld with dark fantasy that has a few more humor elements to it. I really find that author Zeb Wells really naturally is able to insert himself into some of these writing situations and would love to see Zeb continue to go in this direction and introduce as many Limbo concepts as possible towards the Amazing Spider Man. I think it matches with the subject material so nicely and touches on really fascinating elements of this character. I'm also incredibly interested to see Peter and Wreck Rap team up again over the next issue. I honestly thought these two characters had a fun and irreverent dynamic over in Amazing Spider Man 36, and I hope their relationship continues to grow and get even more nuanced as the Amazing Spider Man continues here. So at the end of the day, I had an absolute blast over on the Amazing Spider-Man 36. I thought the inclusion of all these Limbo elements was captured with such strong execution from Zeb Wells and Ed McGuinness here. Really seeing Peter meet up with Madeline again in the post-Dark Web timeline was really thrilling here. I also liked some of the tension over between Spider-Man and Luke Cage. It feels like Luke Cage is so stressed out with all these Limbo heroes running across New York City here, and getting to see some of his reactions was a ton of fun over in this series. I want to know from you. Are you as much of a fan of Amazing Spider-Man 36 as I am? What are some of your thoughts over on the Dark Web storyline? Let me know down in the comments below. Thank you so much for coming to watch our video review over on Amazing Spider-Man issue 36, and we'll be back to see where this series is headed in the very near future. Thanks so much, and I'll see you soon.